Daniel, can I just ask something? Daniel, can you hear me? It's Che.
Che,
Che. I just want to, Daniel, I'm just checking, are we going to follow this booklet? So
Yes.
should I be making notes in this booklet as we're going along?
Yeah. You can feel free to make notes in the book if you've got the book. I will also be putting the book up on
Yep.
the screen to follow along as you go. So yeah, if you like to
Right,
take notes in
cool.
the book or
Thank
just
you.
take notes generally, I think the book's fairly self-explanatory. So, but there might be extra comments and things in there you might want to write in. So, all right, welcome everyone. Let's officially get started. So great to see so many familiar faces and all right, but let's get started. So I'd love to hear from maybe a few people, just some quick comments about sight reading and what's. I'm just going to mute everyone too. Hold on, so we get a bit of order here with this many people.
Usually, all I do is go
So
back.
just I'll ask I'll ask for you to unmute when the time is right. Okay. So I just wanted to get this is where you can unmute if you want to say something here. I just want to ask about sight reading and what's your main struggle? What is your main struggle? Anyone, what's your main struggle with sight reading? Scylla.
Well, what happens is if it's above the 5th fret, I write it in the fingering and then I read the fingering and I just ignore the notes. It's almost like I'm using tab, except I'm actually not using tab, I'm using the music. Okay. And I've been doing that for a long time. And so I've actually never really learnt the top half of the fretboard very well. But okay. Since I've been playing in an ensemble, it's got a bit better because I have had to do some sight reading.
Yep.
Yeah, without fingering. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Good stuff. So you've been.
For me, it's chords. Sight reading chords.
Chords. Yeah, we had another person say chords, especially in higher positions. So sight reading chords. Good one, Paul. Thank you. Tom.
Yeah, my problem is that I found that the reading is actually preventing me from enjoying the music and playing the music.
Yeah.
It's a distraction. Yeah. It's to me, music begins when I remember what I'm doing, like yes. And also, I don't really enjoy reading because I enjoy studying music. And for that reason, I enjoy your composition classes because your analysis helps me to understand, not only the compositions that I play, but also compositions that I compose.
Yes.
So I think that the reading is a kind of directions, in another direction to what I'm, kind of trying to focus my life on.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest obstacle.
That's a good one to end on, I think, because the ultimate goal for me to pass on to you is that I want reading to be exactly that, to not be a distraction, to not be this kind of chore or this process in learning a piece which just takes you so long, and every new piece you learn, it's just you have to go through that whole process again. You can get to the point with reading, it does take time and commitment, obviously, but you can get to the point with reading where you can put virtually any piece of music on your stand and and read through it with very little sort of problem. And then the problems you do have, that's where practice comes in, and you just solve those issues you're having. So that's the ultimate goal, and it will take more than 2 hours. But I want to introduce you here to materials and methods that will help get you started, so that reading becomes a bit more second nature, and you can put a piece on your music stand and just confidently, securely, and quickly read through it. Okay, so and we get in the comments a few more comments. Dotted notes is something. So dotted notes. We'll talk about dotted notes a little bit today. Notes in higher positions above B, Duncan says. And Helen says, being an adult learner, brain not as sharp as a 5-year-old. I think we can, if you treat music sort of like a Sudoku, like a puzzle, something that you practice in a specific way, I think it'll sharpen your brain in terms of reading notes. My brain is very dull when it comes to certain, math or, certain things to do with other topics, science. I'm not very sharp at those topics, but because I've been practicing reading a lot, I think it's sharpened my mind in terms of reading music. So it's a very specific aspect. Jill says complex rhythms. Okay, so yeah, we'll be talking about rhythms today, and hopefully we won't have time to address complex rhythms, but hopefully the method that we'll use will help you address reading complex rhythms. Okay.
But one question, Daniel.
Salvador, yeah.
Salvador. When do you apply reading? During training or during playing an actual piece? Because I have this problem. I have this fixation to the notes, and I try to not read during an actual playing. It's very impossible for me.
So how do you learn something if you're not reading it?
Yeah, but this is the point. You need to read it first, memorize it,
yeah,
and then get rid of the reading.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, this is my goal in this session.
Yeah, that's your goal. Okay.
Yeah.
Memorization is slightly, it's a slightly different topic, but I think that, as you're saying, the faster you can read something, the faster you can just get to that stage of playing the music and thinking about the music and memorizing. So, yeah, again, that's kind of that ultimate goal here.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Salvador. Let's dive in to the first topic. All right. So I've got to go back. Here we go. So I'm just going to be using the book that you all received. Hopefully, you've all received that book. Still got people coming in. All right. Wow, 68 people. It's really fantastic. Thank you, everyone, again. Sight Reading Made Simple. Here is book 1 on materials and processes. There's a preface. I'm not going to read that for you. We're just going to dive straight into reading notes. This is one of the first preliminary stages of sight reading that can be neglected. This is where we are reading music as though we're reading a text. We're just reading notes away from any instrument. Because if we're reading notes on a page and we're slow at actually identifying a note on a page, that's going to slow us down identifying notes on the guitar, isn't it? Yeah? So we need to develop our skills and practice reading notes on the page. And there are 3 main topics that fit under this. So rapid recall is just being able to rapidly see a note and say it, okay? See a note and just say, that's this note, as rapidly as possible. Then we can go into studying the music a little bit more. Excuse me. So we can look at the melodic movement. What are the notes? What sort of movement are the notes going in? Because that can really help us. We don't have to read individual notes so much. We can just look at the general movement of the notes. And then intervals is another one. So what intervals are notes moving by? That can also really help us to just rapidly identify what's coming next and what notes do we have stacked, on top of each other, something to do with chords, for example. Okay, so what I have here is just these are some charts by Johann Caspar Merz. I'm sure many of you know the name Johann Caspar Merz, yeah? So this is from his method book, from Merz's Guitar School. And what this gives you are some different charts to use that can just help you as a reference, okay? So we have the notes that are on the lines, E, G, B, D, F. And I do have a note here. H means the note B in German, okay? So I haven't translated it to English. I thought it was cool to just show that this is Merz's. I like to kind of showcase the original texts. So H means B, okay? So you just have to bear that in mind for these particular charts. So E, G, B, D, F are the notes on the lines, right? Some of us might use the term every good boy deserves fruit or something like that. And then for the notes in the spaces, F, A, C, and E. Okay, so I think maybe a few, most of you are probably familiar, or at least relatively familiar with that, yeah? Can I maybe get some hands up if you've heard of that before? Every good boy deserves fruit, and face. Yeah, so I'm seeing some hands up. Cool. So that's for the lines and the spaces. Now, having a reference for notes about that above the system and below the system can be really helpful, right? Because these ones here are notes within the system, okay, within the musical system. So we can use the every good boy deserves fruit and the face to help us remember those notes. But when we start getting above and below the stave, that can get a little tricky, right? Because we don't have a tool to help us remember these notes. This is where having a reference and just recalling can be really helpful. Okay, so we have notes above the system. So this is your reference G, A, B, C, D, E. So that's what those notes look like above the system. And then we have notes below the system, D, all the way down to the low E on the guitar. Okay, so having this reference here can be very helpful. If you're stuck, if you see one of these notes above the system or below the system, you can just use this as a reference and then start getting to know those notes. Then we have octaves here. So this could be another way to quickly identify notes that are above, within, and below the system, the musical staff. Yeah. So we've got the C's there, the D's there. So the C below, the C within, the C above. And the D below, the D within, the D above. The E, excuse me, below, 2 E's within, 1 E above, and so on. The F's, they're all the F's we can play on the guitar. The G's there, all the G's we can play on the guitar. All the A's we can play on the guitar, and all the B's we can play on the guitar. Although there is one more B, but it's very, very rarely played. The B on the 19th fret, the very, very high B, but that's quite a rare one. So that's not in this chart, but we have most of those notes. Does that kind of seem a little helpful to anyone here? Seeing those notes, there are all the C's I need to know, all the D's I need to know. Yeah, that kind of limits things down, narrows things down a little bit. Then we've got a chart of all of the diatonic notes. That means notes without sharps or flats. Okay, so all of the diatonic notes that we can play on the guitar. Okay, so we're starting the lowest note there, and then there's the high A. So that's another reference for you, just with diatonic notes. Okay, so I think those charts are very helpful. I think Mertz put them in his method book for a good reason, because I think they are very, very helpful, very useful for reading notes. Which will help you play notes. Okay. So use these charts to help you recall those notes as rapidly as you can. Say the notes out loud. So this is your first task, is when you read something, before you read it on the guitar, just read the notes out loud, or you could read it in your head. You don't have to read it out loud, but you want to say the notes out loud. And you can use whatever, if you want to use do, re, mi, or A, B, C, or C, D, E, just the letters. That's absolutely fine, whatever you prefer, okay? So I'll give you an example of if I was reading this out loud. I'd say C, B, G, C, B, G, C, D, E, G, F, E, D, G, okay? Now you don't have to worry about rhythm yet, so don't worry if your rhythm is wrong or right. All you're focusing on is pitch, rapid recall of pitch. We're going to focus on rhythm towards the end. That's the last topic here. Okay, so who would like to have a go at reading? Maybe we could do this one here. A couple of bars of this line here. Who would like to have a go? Now I've got a lot of people, so just unmute yourself, please, if you'd like to have a go and say, here I am, ready to go.
I can do it.
Okay.
I do with the do, re, mi.
Can you say your name, please?
Salvador.
Salvador. Okay, Salvador.
Yeah.
I'm just Trying to find you. There you are. All right. Excellent.
Okay,
Oh,
that's sol, sol, mi, sol, fa, sol, di, re, fa,
yeah.
mi, sol, do, mi.
Good. Okay. You seem a little bit like this. How difficult is that for you?
Not difficult at all.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's go to intermediate here. So can you say, when we have chords, what I'd like you to do is read the notes from bottom to top or top to bottom.
Do, mi, do, do, mi, do, do, mi, do. Just repetition. Do, mi, do. Re, re, si, mi, do. That's sol, sol, fa, re, sol, mi, fa, re.
Okay. Good.
Do.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're pretty good at that too.
Yep.
Excellent. So your recall is pretty fast already, I would say. If we tried something a bit more, could we try something like this, please?
Okay, yeah, I don't mention the sharps. That's
Yeah, don't mention the sharps, that's fine.
sol, sol, la, si, re, si, re, sol, si, re, fa, la, do, re, la, sol, do, re, la, sol,
Good. You
la.
said la sol here, but it's la si.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But that's you're pretty. I think your recall is pretty good. So we might, maybe in another topic, where you might find, that you have a bit more room for improvement. I think your recall seems to be pretty fast. So I'd love to get someone else as well. Thank you, Salvador. That was a really great demonstration for us to see. Someone else, maybe we'll go back to this one. Someone who's perhaps a bit more, sight reading's quite a new thing, especially this type of, maybe if you've never done this before, and it's just to put you on the spot a little bit, but anyone?
I can have a shot if you like, Daniel.
Someone that sounds like Che's voice. Is it Che's voice?
Sorry, it is Che. Yep, sorry, it is Che. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe if you could say your name, everyone, before you. So
Of
I can
course.
find you.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, Che. So you want to have a go at?
So I'll call them by their note names, okay?
Yeah, great.
So we've got G, high G, and then we've got the low G, and then E, and then G, F, G, D, F, E, G, C, E, D, B, G, F, E.
Okay, so Che, you seem pretty fluent with this range of notes here.
Yeah, that's the easy range for me. Yeah, it's the other ones that get me.
So like a little bit higher, maybe, or a little bit more lower and higher.
Yeah.
Mixed.
Low is not too bad, but high ones I have a lot of
High
trouble
ones.
with.
Okay. All right. High ones. Maybe I'll go
That's
to
a challenge.
let me go to a different example. Let's go to some higher notes here. Okay.
Oh my God.
So
Okay. Shall I just do the high ones and not struggle with the middle ones, or do you want me to do all of them?
All of them. So if we can get that change from
Okay.
just yeah.
So my little shortcut for these high notes is to know that ACE or ACE falls on those top three lines. So that's my own little strategy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that top note is an F.
For a second, Jay. Sorry. So A,
Yep.
C, E are the lines there. Yeah. Like that might be a useful one for other people too, to know that. So the first line's A, the second line's C, the third line's E, and then from there you could work out. Well, this is A, so sorry, this is. Hang on a second.
That's an F.
Yeah, this is E. Sorry, A, C, E. So this note is then
An F.
F.
Yeah.
That's right. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll continue.
Okay, you want me to go on? So it's B, F, D, F, B, F, high F,
Yeah.
B, high F, B, G, C, G, B, F, B, E, B, G, C, G, B, E, B, G, I think that is
Yes, that's correct.
up there. Is that a high G?
Yeah.
B, G, C, G, B, G, B.
All right, good job, Che. I think for the purposes of this particular workshop, your recall is pretty good. So, you know, it might take a little while to find. Yeah, I'm trying to sort of find someone who, you know, who might be a little bit less experienced with reading notes, as if there is someone. But we kind of have to move on to the next topic. But hopefully that gives you and everyone here an idea of what the process is, okay, to be able to recall these notes as quickly as possible. There's lots of material here. I have got, you know, just a couple of examples, so a few examples for a sort of a beginner level for you to practice, and then intermediate. So there's more notes there. They go a little bit higher and lower, and then a more advanced one which has even more notes and goes even a bit higher and a bit lower. Okay, so you can use those. There's also some material at the back of the book too that you can use, and obviously you can use this process for any music that you're studying or reading as well, or that you want to read. Okay, but it's sort of like the step one. Yeah, if you can't read the note on the page, if you can't identify the note, you know, it's gonna be a bit of a struggle for you to place that note onto the instrument. So you want to recall these notes as quickly as possible. Awesome.
Daniel, just a quick question. Would you recommend in order to improve your fluency of identifying those notes, to read through them without actually trying to play them as a first step?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Read through these notes without playing. Yes. It's a specific skill that you want to develop away from your instrument. Being able to read music just as music, if that makes sense. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
So, cool. Thanks for that.
Daniel, this is Salvador.
Yeah, Salvador.
Just a quick hint.
Yeah.
For higher notes, everything above the third line repeats.
Everything
because you're repeating
above the
again.
third line repeats.
Repeats. You start from the F, G, as if you were starting from the first note.
Do you mean F?
Above the third line? No, the ledger. Above the third ledger.
Line. So if we had F like with 3 lines.
Yep.
So my ACE acronym repeats itself.
Correct. So you have E on the third line, and then F starts right above the third line, and every line repeats again. Every note repeats again.
I'm not quite following. Every note repeats. You're probably making a lot of sense, but I'm just not. I can't.
The first note on the bridge is F, right? The first note close to the bridge. So this is F.
Yeah, that's F. Yeah.
So you start repeating. You start repeating the notes again.
So if we put a G, if we put a line in there.
No. The first note is F.
Yeah.
Above the third line is F.
Okay.
And the first note in next to the bridge is F.
The first note next to the bridge.
Yep.
Is F. Do you mean on the guitar?
Yeah, on the guitar, right.
Oh, the first note is F here.
Yep. And also, if you go back all the way to the bridge.
Yeah. So you're making a relationship between the lines and the fretboard.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that you have 12 frets, right?
Yeah.
From the bridge to the body of the guitar.
Yep.
The 13th note is a repetition from the first.
Yes.
So this F.
Yes.
F.
It's the same as
this
here.
You're carrying the distance.
Yeah. I see what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. We repeat the fret. You know, the fretboard repeats from the 12th fret and above. Yeah. The 12th fret is the open string, and then the 13th fret is like the first fret, and so on. Yeah. Okay. That is another useful tip. Thank you. We will be looking at more fretboard charts and learning the fretboard in more detail and doing things like similar to that in the third week of this course. This is actually a 4-week course. Yeah, so we will be looking at that in a bit more detail, learning the fretboard and repeating patterns up the fretboard, shifting patterns up the fretboard, looking at more charts, getting to know the fretboard really thoroughly. But that's another great little tip there. It's good to pick up. You see, we all have our different approaches and tips and things that we've picked up on the way, so it's really great. So choose your level and read the notes out loud, and then when there are 2 or more notes together, read them from bottom to top, or you could go from top to bottom. Okay, so that's the first task there, to do with rapid recall. Next is to look at the movement, to study the movement of the notes, and this can really help us, because we can start to see a relationship between notes. We're not just looking at notes in isolation, but we start to see a relationship between one note and the next. So, do they move by scale motion, like A, B, C? Do they move by chord motion? If so, do they outline a chord? And this might help some of you who struggle a little bit with identifying or reading chords. What intervals are used? The distance from one note to another is an interval. Okay, so luckily for us, after studying a lot of melodies, I've found that a lot of melodies tend to move mostly by step, which is to say they move up and down one letter at a time, like if you're reading, the alphabet up and down one letter at a time. Okay, so there are only 3 ways that music can move from one note to another, either by step, which is called conjunct, it's kind of the technical lingo, by leap, which is called disjunct, or by not moving, which is static. So you're only looking for one of the 3. There's no other way for music to move from one note to another. So the example below shows how a melody will primarily move by step. Following that are charts of all notes laid out in a scale for reference. So you can use these charts to help you gain fluency in stepwise movement. Okay, so if you were to read this out loud, you would see that what I've bracketed out there is where the music is moving by step. So could someone tell me what's the advantage? If you can identify when music is moving by step, what advantage does that give you? Why is it helpful to know that a melody is moving by step?
It's
Notes
Che.
come in alphabetical order.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Notes come
Alphabetical
in
order.
alphabetical order.
Yeah, that's it. Che, were you going to say something along those lines? Or
I was just going to suggest you'll know the note if it's just one step either above or below the previous note.
Exactly.
That makes it easy to know
Yeah.
what it would be.
So
Yeah.
we're one step
And
above
also
or below.
notes-
So you just have to
notes-
think of the direction.
Notes move along the scale.
That's right.
Notes move along the scale.
Moving along the scale. So all you have to think of is the direction that the notes are moving in. Is it going up or down? So if you can identify that it's moving by step, you only need to think, is the melody moving up or down? So that makes reading something like this. If I see this note, I see it's going up, C, D, E, right? Bang. Should be really quick. And then you can group these 4 notes together. It's going G, it's going down, G, F, E, D, right? I'm starting to group those together, and I can recall them very quickly because I'm not even reading them. I'm just saying G going down. Okay, I'm not actually reading the notes individually. So that's a really helpful way to sort of start to group notes and see the relationship between notes. So we've got some charts here. If you want some reference just to use, because I've found it can be very helpful if you link. Let's say we take this little segment here, this G, F, E, D, and then you find that little reference here, right? There it is, G, F, E, D. Okay, so this is just like a bunch of notes going up in a scale. So you can find that segment G, F, E, D there, and you can that might just help you if you find that helpful to use the charts. And then we've got chromatic notes in case the music is moving chromatically, so using sharps, and then in case the music is using sharps or flats, right? I'm trying to be very thorough here So if you see a little melody that's moving and you've got some flats in it, you could use this chart, right? If it's moving by steps with flats, like something like this, right? You've got that there as a reference point if you wanted to use that. You could also practice these charts too. You could play these charts, say the notes out loud as well. But the really important thing is that you start to identify when music is moving by step, and then start to say what direction are the notes going in, and just go from there. Is it going up or down? So let's have a look here. Yeah, let's look at the next one. So moving by chord motion here. So music often either moves by scale motion or by chord motion. So if you know scale motion, which most of you will be, if you're fluent with the alphabet, you're going to be pretty fluent at scale motion. Okay, you just have the tricky spot is when music, music only goes from A to G in the alphabet, and then it restarts. So sometimes it can be a bit confusing. When you get to a G and it goes up to A, you have to sort of restart the musical alphabet. But if you're fluent at your alphabet, then you're going to be pretty good at that aspect. Moving by chord motion is not as intuitive, because chord motion is based on thirds, and we don't do our alphabets in thirds a lot, do we? Yeah, we don't go A, C, E, D, F, A, E, G, B. That's not intuitive unless you've already practiced it, okay? So what I've got here is something you can practice. You can practice chord motion, and you can practice reading the motion. You don't have to play these notes. You just have to read them out. Yeah, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, D, B, D, F, C, E, G, and so on. Yeah. So if you practice reading those out, you're reading the triads, the chord motion, from the lowest to the highest, pretty much the highest positions on the guitar there. Okay, and I've grouped them here: low, middle, and high. All right, so you can practice identifying. There's something powerful about, obviously, when we're reading, about the visual, and then speaking the notes just gives us an extra knowledge, an extra connection to those notes. So who can tell me what 3 notes do we have here, and if you can form them into a triad, which is actually found in this chart? Would someone like to tell me what 3 notes, what triad do we have there? 3 notes stacked in thirds. It's
a C triad.
It's a C triad. Eli, I can hear that. Yeah, hello, Eli. Very good. Where is it in this chart, Eli? Where is that C triad?
If you bring the G upwards, you find it in the middle one.
Yeah, if we bring the G upwards.
Yeah, from in the piece. So it's in second inversion.
Yeah, if we bring the G up to here, yeah.
Yes.
Like
that's the second inversion, Daniel.
Yeah, it's an inversion of a triad, but we do have those 3 notes of C, E, and G. Okay, so what I want you to try and do is start to be able to stack those notes into thirds. Okay, let's go over to another one, because this one might be a bit more straightforward. If we look at this one here, can someone tell me a direct connection between these 3 notes there and one of these triads here?
B, D, F.
Yes. That was a new voice, I think. Name, please. Could I get your name, please?
Les.
Les. Ah, thank you, Les.
Yep.
Excellent.
Kangaroo Island.
Kangaroo Island.
Yep.
Kangaroo Island. Gee, is that like off the coast of Australia?
Off the coast of South Australia.
Off the coast of South Australia. I think I've seen that on a map before. So BDF, all right, over there. Okay. So these are triads in root position, and as someone, I think Salvador mentioned, this is a triad that's in an inversion. So, and we're not going to get into triads too much today, but I can tell you that if you're fluent at reading these notes, if you're fluent at thinking in triads, right? If you're fluent in thinking CEG, DFA, EGB, right? If you're fluent at that, you'll start to pick up a lot of these types of patterns, all right? So that's another aspect. So you want to be able to look at the scale motion and look at the chord motion in music. So identify and mark in the motion of the melody when you're reading something. So use C for conjunct. Is it moving by step? Use D for disjunct if it's moving by leap, and use S for static if it's staying on the same note. Mark in any chordal motion or arpeggios and block them together using a bracket. Okay, so when you're scanning through music, try to identify any triads you can and bracket them out. And then if you can identify, you can use this chart to help you. What triad is it? What 3 notes are being used? Okay, and I know for some of you it might take a long time to start identifying those triads, but that's totally fine. That's where the practice of reading comes in. Okay.
Daniel,
Yes.
can you explain what's meant by moving if the note is static? How does music
Well, yeah,
move
it's
if
not moving. Yeah, I guess it's technically it's just staying on the same note. So sometimes melodies will just stay on a single note. Like here, for example, this D moves to another D, so that's static motion.
Oh, I see what
that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So here, these 3 notes, we have conjunct motion, right? Because we have disjunct motion because the music is moving by by leap, right? We've got these big leaps in the music. Here we have what kind of motion, anyone? C for conjunct, which is moving by step, D for disjunct, which is moving by leap, and S for static, which is staying on the same note. It's not staying on the same note, so we can rule that out. Are there any leaps?
No.
Someone?
It's going by step.
Moving by step. That's it. So C for conjunct. Okay. All right. So does that? Yeah. Hopefully that might help clarify things a little bit more just by looking at that. Yeah. All right. The last topic here for reading, for rapid recall, is intervals. So this is just getting a little bit more specific. So an interval is the distance from one note to another. So becoming fluent at reading and identifying intervals is yet another crucial aspect of the language of music. So what you want to do is think about music horizontally and vertically. So what are the intervals horizontally and what are the intervals vertically? Okay. And this is great because you can practice this with any piece. Just like any of these methods we're talking about, you can pick up any piece from any of your books and you can start to practice your fluency of intervals. So here I've marked in, from C to B is a second, right? A 2. From B to G is a third, so I've marked in a 3. From G to C is a 4th, so I've marked in a 4. And intervals are a bit strange because the note you start on is 1. Okay, so C is 1, and then we're going down to B. So B up to C is actually 2, or C down to B is 2, right? So it's a bit, sometimes it can throw us off a little bit, okay? But just remember that. So who would like to have a go at these horizontal intervals? Maybe we can start from here, from this note, and we'll go across a couple of bars. You can tell me the interval that we have. Anyone? Eli.
All right. Major second, minor second, major second, fifth, fourth.
Yeah.
minor second, major third.
That's good. Let's stop there. Eli, fantastic. So you actually went a bit above and beyond as you normally do, Eli, by identifying the quality of the interval, which is also important. But for the sake of today, just saying the number is enough for everyone else. So don't worry that Eli was saying the quality of the intervals. Don't worry about that if that's if that's a little bit more advanced of a topic for you. Very good work there, Eli. Now, have you practiced this kind of thing before? Have you practiced intervals? Because that was pretty fast.
Well, I know intervals pretty well. I know that I play piano, so that's easier on the piano. You just have keys laid out. I think.
Okay, so yeah, all right. Very good, Eli. Thank you.
Daniel, it's Paula.
Paula, hello.
Hi there. Hi. So, how are you? I mean, I understand why it's good to work these intervals out, but how are you then thinking about using it when you're sight reading? Are you just thinking then about referring it to the number of frets?
This is more to do with just getting deeper into reading. So if you see that this is G to C and then you know it's a fourth, it establishes a deeper relationship between G to C, right? You're not just saying G and then C, and then you're not just saying G to C is a leap. You're actually saying specifically what is the leap. It's actually the leap of a fourth.
And then how is that going to then help you find those notes on the fretboard? Or is it just
that will be discussed more? Yeah, it's a good question. That will be discussed more in week 3, where we study the fretboard and we study intervals and shifting intervals. For example, if you take a fourth, like this, that's a fourth, for example. If you use that same finger pattern anywhere on the fretboard on those same 2 strings, you've also got a fourth there. Okay, so that's something that we're going to study more in week 3. There's not enough time to cover everything in 2 hours. So
Sure.
we're only looking at reading notes. We haven't even started to put them on the fretboard yet. Okay. But thanks for the question. Thanks, Paula. Yeah, good to see you. Okay, so I'm sure there are other people sort of thinking a similar thing. How does that actually relate to the fretboard? Well, we will look at that in more detail, because there are certain patterns you can learn that can make learning those intervals on the fretboard a lot faster. But first we need to be able to read them, right? If we can't read them rapidly, then we won't know it's a fourth, and then we won't know what finger pattern to use. So G to C is a fourth. Would someone like to continue? Tell me some intervals. Someone who's maybe, if someone feels a bit...
I'll give it a go. This will be embarrassing, but I'll give it a go if you want.
Cool, thank you, Scylla.
So C to E is a third, I think.
Yes.
So 3, yeah. Then down 1.
Down 1.
To D,
yeah.
From E to D. Then another third.
Yep.
Then 1.
Yep.
Then up 3.
I should clarify this, actually. We shouldn't say 1, because a 1 is technically the same note. So we want to do...
Well, it's a semitone. I'm not sure the proper way to say it.
E to D or D to E is a second, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah,
right,
okay.
So let's clarify that. So that, yeah, B to... I understand. This is what I meant. It kind of doesn't make sense mathematically, but the note we start on is 1 already. So
yes, okay.
You've got to keep that in mind. Okay? Yeah, I haven't.
So B to A is 2.
It's 2.
Then?
Yeah.
1, 2. Yeah. Okay. And then A to C is 3.
Yes.
And then we go down to a D, and that's going to be I don't know, 6. I'm guessing.
Not 6.
No.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5?
Not 5 either. No. It's a little bit more.
5. Well, it's going to be 7.
7. There you go.
What else could there be?
Don't be ashamed.
Okay.
I use my fingers still. You know, D, E, F, G.
So,
That's yeah.
Oh God! And then we're going way up to what looks like an F sharp. From a D, it's going to be
what I'd suggest
11 or something.
What I suggest you
10 or
do
11?
is it's called compound. So what you'll do is think D to F, and that's
so D to D is 8.
Yeah.
And then 9, 10.
Yeah, it's actually a tenth. Yeah.
10
you
sharp.
could say 10. But if we took it a bit more abstractly and we said it's D to F, what would we have then? Don't worry about the octave.
Well, 9.
No, just D to F.
10.
So
Yes, 10.
Pretend that F was down here. Just take.
Well, that would be 8.
Abstract. No, D. Imagine F was down here. We're just abstracting it a little bit. You're saying D.
Oh, I see what you mean. There's a D, E, F.
That's it.
So that would be a third.
That would be.
So it's an 11th. So it's 11.
No, you were right with 10. It would be a 10.
Yeah, okay, 10.
But we're going to abstract it, okay, when it's beyond an octave.
If I have to work out intervals, like if I'm doing jazz chords or anything, and it says you've got to put an 11th in, I have to count it out all the time. I never actually know them.
Okay. Yeah. This kind of practice can be very helpful. Just reading through and just numbering them in. All right, maybe we'll do one more.
And then
yeah.
That's a semitone, so that's F sharp to G. A minor. There you are, minor second.
The minor second, but number.
Yeah.
Of the intervallic number is
2.
Second, so it's 2. You said second,
2,
so
yes,
we're going to say
yes.
2, not 1. Okay, even though they're so close together, the interval is actually 2. Okay.
Okay.
How could we make this if we wanted to say that it was 1 and we played exactly the same note? What would we have to do that? We wanted to use. Sorry?
Somebody else might want to answer that question. I don't know what you mean.
Make the G flat?
Make it a G flat, yeah. So if that note was a G flat, which is the same note technically, right? F sharp and G flat, then we could say 1 because we're on the same pitch, G to G. Okay?
Well, except you're going from a G flat to a G natural.
Doesn't matter. It's still a.
So it's the same. It's the same thing.
Unison. It's still a unison.
Oh, that's very.
It's the letter.
That's very confusing.
It's the letter that matters, right? It's the letter that matters because G to G, we're staying on the same letter. G to G, it's always going to be 1. If we're going from F to G, it's always going to be 2. Okay? There's no exceptions to the letter. The letter is the.
You mean when you say the letter, you mean the number?
No, I mean the letter, like F to G, for example.
Oh,
if we're saying F and we're going to G, it has to be 2 because F to G, is a distance from each other. But if we're saying G to G, it has to be 1 because they're the same letter. Okay?
If you were saying F sharp
that's
to
very
G flat,
confusing.
if you were saying F sharp to G flat, which is the same note, would that still be a 1 or a 2?
If you're saying F sharp to G flat, it's still 2 because you're saying F to G. Right? The letters are different to each other, so they're going to be not a 1. Right? If the letters are the same, they will always be a 1. If it's G to G, whatever type of G you've got, it's going to be a first or a 1. If you have F sharp to G, we've got F to G. Think of it this way, right? Maybe a bit more abstract might help. F to G. So what it's 2. We've got 2. It doesn't matter what we do to these notes. F flat to G double flat or F, or let's do a simpler one. F sharp to G flat. It's still 2 because of the distance. Okay.
That's confusing.
It's very confusing. Yeah, I don't understand that. It's a semitone. I mean, semitone is a semitone.
A semitone is a semitone, but a semitone can have a different, from a theoretical point of view, it really depends on what letter is being used, right? So if we had,
but surely what matters is the fact that it's 1 fret on a guitar, which a semitone is 1 fret on a guitar.
Yeah,
Surely
it's
that's
one
what's
fret, but
important.
intervallically, we need to consider the letter. The letter is what tells us the interval, not the number of frets. The number of frets tells us a certain distance from one note to another. It doesn't tell us the interval in all of its detail. An interval has two parts. An interval has a letter and a number, right? Letter, which is like F to G. Sorry, a letter and a quality. A letter and then a quality. Minor, major, perfect, so on. Okay, interval has two parts to it. A letter and a quality. The letter is what defines the number of the interval. Okay, so from F to G will always be 2. From G to G will always be 1. And then you look at the quality. Do we have G to G sharp or whatever it is? Okay, so G to G sharp is 1. I really want people to understand this is really important that if we have a couple of people who find this more confusing, then I'm sure there are others who are maybe finding this confusing too. So if we could write out, what I had written out there was pretty much demonstrating it. G, so G sharp.
Daniel, it's Che. Can I just ask Daniel?
Yeah.
I would have thought that the function of an interval is to convey the amount of pitch change between a note and another one. And if you say it's a single interval, then or it's a 1, in my mind that means that the note has stayed the same.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay.
So this seems to be purely a theoretical terminology.
Yeah, the letter is the same letter. So this G to G sharp is 1, but we are changing note. We're changing from a G to a G sharp upper semitone. But because it's notated as a G, in both notes are notated as a G, we have a first, a 1. However, if the letter changes from F sharp to G flat, for example, and that's actually the same note. Okay, that's actually the same note. We're playing the same note. It's just being written differently. The reason for this is because it does make sense in certain contexts to write like G to G sharp, for example, rather than F double sharp to G sharp, or some other way of writing it. Or it would...
So Daniel, if I could just bully you a bit further about this.
Yeah.
We're saying that intervals, the function of using the terminology interval is not to convey the sense of change in pitch. Because so saying a 2 or a 3 or a 4 conveys the sense of pitch change. You're changing at 3 notes or 2 notes or 4 or whatever. But if you are going from a G to a G sharp, which is a change in pitch, but it still stays the letter 1 or the number 1, then in that instance, that reference is not conveying a sense of a change in pitch. Because by saying 1, you might think it's a G to a G.
Quality as well. So we have, we have a major. We could have a let's think about. We could have an augmented first. Okay, so that would the quality of will tell us that there is a change. Augmented, diminished, major, minor. Right, that tells us also that there is a change in the amount of tones and semitones that we have. So the number tells us a change in letter. Okay, so a change or no change. So if it's 1, there's no change in letter. The quality tells us the change in terms of how many tones and semitones we have within the number.
Right, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, Che's got it. Who else didn't have it?
Daniel,
yeah.
It's Karen here.
Karen, yeah.
Is it something to do with in different eras, in different times, there are conventions about if you're going up, if your melody's going up, you put sharps, and if your melody's going down, you put flats.
Yeah, that's one
to
context.
notes.
Yes.
And so you, it's part of the convention to write it that way, but it can lead to this sort of issue of the note being the same note in a sound sense, but not in a written sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one consideration as well. Yeah. Another consideration is the key that you're in as well. You'll tend to find certain, sharps and flats that are more typically used in certain keys than other keys as well. And it depends on how a composer wants to spell a certain interval or a certain chord as well. It might just make more sense to the eye to spell something a certain way, to use an F sharp instead of a G flat. So if whatever is being used, you have to look at the letter and say, all right, I've got an F there, so that's the letter I've got, so that's going to determine the interval. So I want to go maybe to Scylla, because Scylla was also having trouble, I think, understanding this aspect. I'd love to clarify this. We got there with Che.
Yeah, I understand the terminology major and minor second, because I've done that in jazz, but I don't. So a minor second, if the letter is the same, is a 1, but it means nothing to me. I mean, it doesn't a 1. I don't understand. That doesn't really exist.
A minor second will be a 2. So in order to have a minor second, you have to have, let's say, E to F. Yeah, you can't have E to E sharp, even though that's the same, right? E to E sharp is essentially the same notes, but we're going from E to E, the same letter. So that is a 1.
Yes.
So this would be an augmented first, because it's a 1 that's being raised up a semitone. This would be a minor second, because it's a 2 with a semitone distance between them.
Oh, okay.
So is that starting to?
I think it's just the terminology. I mean, I think that's the only problem.
It's the terminology. It's very.
It's a little bit esoteric, I think.
It's a bit abstract. It's a bit illogical in a way. Like it kind of defies logic a little bit. But
I would move on. It's probably just me.
No, not just you. It was you and Che, and I think others as well. So someone else, Karen. Was that Karen again?
No, it's Paula.
Paula.
Hi there. You have to know that there's only a semitone between E and F to start off with. I think you have to know where the tones and the semitones lie in the major scale to be able to understand whether it's a minor second or a major.
Well, that's
Yes, that's true. Yes, I get that. Yeah.
That's to do with quality. So minor, major, augmented, so on. That's the quality of an interval, and I don't want to actually. It wasn't my plan to even talk about the quality of an interval. All I wanted to talk about was the number of the interval, which is determined purely by the letter, distance by letter. So as I said, E to F will always be 2. Doesn't matter if it's a minor second or a major second or an augmented second or a diminished. We're not for now. If that's a little bit beyond you, that's totally fine. As long as you can count alphabetically from one note to another. Just here we have G to C. Just counting that. If we have one with a sharp, D to F, don't worry about the fact that it's F sharp. The interval we want to do is just purely based on what letter you're starting on and what letter you're going to, D to F.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thanks, Paula. All right, we hit a little snag, and we got there with, I think we sort of got there a little bit with some of you. That's what we're here for. This is what the workshop's here for. It's a difference between watching a pre-recorded video where you could be thinking like, what the heck, I don't understand this, and well, I can give it my best go to try and help you to understand it. And then hopefully some others are here and who might have a similar question. And sometimes, a lot of the times, other people might have the answer because I'm only one person. And this is the beauty of these group sessions, of these workshops. We have the collective mind. It's very powerful. So, All right, we've got some. I'm sorry that I don't really have time to look at a lot of these comments because we've got some. Apologies for that. So let's talk about vertical intervals next. Okay. Here. So again, now when notes are stacked on top of each other, we can also count them just as we did vertically. Okay. So this first one here, C to E, as we went through with Scylla, she had identified that being a 10. Back here from D to F. D to F is a 10. You could also call that a 3 because let's just go abstract. Just say those notes C and we have E. And then if you want to say 10, you can if that suits you better. You know, if you're at that level where you know tenths very well. If you want to say 3, because we're just going from C to E, that's fine as well. Who can tell me the rest of, well, maybe a couple of these vertical intervals now? So with vertical intervals, you'll typically get larger numbers, right? We won't find, 2s so much. We might find 3s quite a bit. But we can see here, most of these are a bit larger, aren't they? Right? Just there's a bit of space in between. But I'd love to get someone to just count. Just start from this note, say the top note, and then you know, if you want to use your fingers and count that distance.
Hey, it's Christian here, Daniel. I'm going to have a red hot crack at this.
Awesome.
You got 10, 6, 6, 2, 3, 6. Well, there's no interval.
This one here, yep.
3.
3.
And then 8.
Oh, good job. Christian, did you say?
Yes.
Christian, awesome. That was very fast.
I just counted the amount of spaces between the lines and the lines.
Oh, you did it pretty quickly though. You weren't counting, you weren't sort of going D, E, F, G, A, B, that's 6. And then E, F, G, A, B, C, that's 6, which is what that's kind of, that's where I was sort of thinking someone might start.
Yeah,
but so how did you do that exactly?
Oh, I literally, so if we go back, so the first line there, that vertical is 10. So basically I counted the note on the line, the bottom one, as 1.
Yep.
And then every good boy. Oh no, yeah, I did all that sort of stuff, but mentally I just went, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
No, but you see, that took you quite a bit of time, whereas you said it almost instantly. So yeah, either you were thinking it very quickly, or you already have this kind of recall. You knew that C to E was a 10th already.
No recall. I just
No
literally
recall?
counted.
Okay, you've got
the
some
note on the
kind
line.
of process going on that's very, very quick.
Yeah, but I just counted the note on the line, and then the space, and then another line, and a space, and another line, and a space, and etc. That's literally just what I did.
The line in a space, line, space, line, space, line, space. Is that what you mean?
And yeah. So and there's 10. So the one you're hovering is number 1. The next space up is 2, etc., etc.
Wow, that's very, very fast.
I got to the top, which is 10.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. Very good. Very good. All right. Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much.
Daniel, would it also help that the sixths are going up in parallel? So if you can visually see
that does help too. So you can see that the bottom line here, this D going to E going to F, and then this B going to C going to D are both moving in scale motion. So we have parallel sixths. Yeah, you could use that as a reference point as well. That's a good point. Who was that? Sorry, who made that comment?
Les.
Les, thank you, Les. Yeah, very good point. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so read and label every horizontal and vertical interval. Just using numbers. Don't worry about major or minor. Don't worry about the quality. That's called the quality. All you want to do is say this is G and this is C. So that is G, A, B, C. So that is 4. Okay, for example. That's the extent of it. Okay, you're going to start to see, as I mentioned, you're going to get a deeper understanding a deeper relationship between one note and another. G to C is 4. You just keep practicing it. I mean, it's just like our instrument. We need to keep drilling and practicing, right, in order to get more fluent and solve problems and understand and have deeper connections. We do just need to go to the source of practice to do that. And then that relationship, the more you do that, the more that relationship becomes ingrained, in addition to the other topics that we'll talk about as well. Okay.
Hey, Daniel.
Yeah.
This is Salvador. There is a quick tip that I learned a long time ago for identifying intervals.
Yeah.
Which is space to line, that's second. Space to space is third.
Yeah.
Line to space is second. Line to line is third. And then you keep on growing like this, and it's very easy.
So
you don't even have to look at.
Is a second.
You don't even have to look at the letters. You just look at the number of lines and
you
spaces.
Can do it that way too. Yeah, and then line space to space.
That's a third.
Okay. Yeah.
And line to line is third. Line to space, line to line and space is fourth, and then you continue like this.
Yeah, it does get a bit, I think, a little trickier maybe when, you know, the further up you go, but that's a good tip as well. I do prefer that you actually say the notes and count the distance as well. I mean, that's a really good visual sort of tip to quickly identify intervals, you know, space to line is a second. However, I think if you can identify in addition to that, you know, that this is F to G, and say F to G, and then say that's 2 because it's F to G because of those letters. And yes, we have to be able to hear. I saw Scylla's point about hearing intervals is very important as well. And in week 4, we're going to go into singing a bit. Okay, so where you actually sing things like this, you can sing intervals. You can play and sing in order to even more deeply internalize music. But the first step, we've only touched on reading notes, right? Reading notes on the score. Okay, so we talked about using charts. Let me just quickly summarize. This is kind of like part 1, and we'll have to move on to part 2 very, very soon. So what we looked at in part 1, looking at reading notes. That's all we've focused on so far, right? Not much to do with the guitar yet. So using charts, right, to give us some visual aid, to give us some references. Looking at the movement, you know, is the melody moving by step or by leap, or is it staying static? We looked at intervals finally there, which we dwelled on a little bit, which is totally fine. And what intervals is the music moving in, right? What intervals do we have? So if you cover all of those aspects, I think you'll start to gain a lot of fluency in your reading away from the instrument. Do we have hands up? I see a couple of hands up. Are they questions? I see Che and Deb. Do you have questions? Are your hands up for the purpose of on Zoom there?
Sorry, it's Che here. I didn't mean to have a hand up. I must have done that before.
All right. And
sorry
Deb,
about that.
Do you have?
Can you hear me, Daniel?
I hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just can't get my video to work. I'm on my little iPad, so it's not working. No, I was just pressing all buttons to try and get the
Oh, you're just pressing some buttons to get the video on. No worries.
Get the screen. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So what we're going to look at next is fretting notes, and how to actually start placing these notes that we're reading onto the fretboard. Okay, so I think we're going to we'll reshuffle a little bit. We'll take a little break now before we get to that. All right, so let's take 5 minutes, and I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Oh.
right, maybe as everyone's coming back in this last minute, I just want to share a resource with all of you that might help you practice identifying intervals and chords and so on. Okay, it's called Teoria.com. And this is something that I used to use a lot to help me with identifying music, to practice things like intervals and chords, for example. And some of you might be familiar with this resource. So this is a free online website. I'll put the link in the chat for you all, and I'll send this in, when I send you all the recording, I'll send you this and any other, resources or materials that might come up today. So here it is in Zoom there. And if you click on music theory and ear training exercises, and let's go intervals, identification and inversion. What you'll get are some exercises here. You can preset some different things, like if you don't want any accidentals, to make it a bit easier. If you want to just do seconds, and what type of seconds you want. You could select everything and make it very difficult, or you can narrow things down. I'll just leave it sort of like that. Then we get this, we get a B to a C. Okay, so it's asking you to identify that interval. If you want to play it, you can, plays it for you. Okay, so B to C. So what interval do we have there? Anyone?
It's a 2.
Yeah, a 2. This, now we do have to go into a bit more detail,
minor second.
Yeah. So for this, this is a little bit more detail than what I was sort of meaning to get to with intervals, but it has arisen. So yeah, minor second. Let's click on minor second. Tick. Yay, everyone. Very good. All right. So good job, everyone who put in the answers there. Okay. So that might be a helpful resource, for quickly identifying on the page intervals. You can also use the audio button to, if you want to hear the interval as well. And we did have someone, I think John was, had some mnemonics for intervals that are useful to remember. I remember learning a lot of those back in the, back earlier on, in university, when I had to identify intervals by ear, and we all shared our, major second is this, and our different ways to remember intervals. But that's more to do with hearing intervals, not necessarily. That's not really going to help with identifying intervals on the page. So identifying intervals on the page, doing exercises like this can be very useful. You can just develop your fluency very rapidly using a tool like this. It's almost like a game, it's just like you're playing a game and just developing your recall of notes. You can also do this with, they have a whole section just on reading, different clefs, different key signatures, different rhythms. And you can use it in Spanish, and then chords as well. So if you want to do your triads, identification of triads, as some people were saying, they have trouble reading chords. And as I said, being able to read them, identify them on the page first is really crucial. So then you've got a triad, you've got to identify what kind of chord it is. Okay, so that might be a good resource for some of you here. Okay, I just thought I'd share that. It's a little bit off the cuff, but it kind of, that again, this is what these workshops are for. I want to try and help with specific struggles that you're having. All right. So, oops, sorry, I scrolled ahead a little bit here. Fretting notes is the next topic here. So we're going to talk about two things: positions and fingerings and references. Okay, positions and fingerings and references. So, fretting notes. Now, how do we actually go, make this applicable for the guitar? So there are three things that can help: positions, fingerings, and references. And I'm clumping positions and fingerings together because they're very much related. So you should know at all times, and this might sound obvious. Oh yeah, please get your guitars ready. Yes, Finn, that's a good question. Get your guitars ready if you have one close by. Thanks, Finn. You should know at all times what position you're in and what fingerings you're using within that position. If you're unaware of one of these two things or of both of these two things, your fingers are like ships lost out at sea with no compass or map to guide. So when I'm reading something, I have to know what position I'm in. That's absolutely top priority. If I don't know what position I'm going to play in, it just throws you into the deep end, right? You just, as I said, it's like you're lost out to sea where, you just don't have any reference point. So you need to know what position you're in at all times. And then when you're in that position, what fingers will you use? And it's typically one finger per fret. There are exceptions to that, but it's typically one finger per fret. Now I know for some of you this will sound very obvious, but I've had so many experiences with people when they're learning a piece, even when it's quite well known, like when they know the piece quite well, they still mix up their positions and they don't know what position they're in exactly at all times. And it leads to lots of problems with fingerings. It leads to lots of problems with reading. So, yeah, and Chris says this is why guitarists, I think one reason why guitarists are at a disadvantage compared with keyboards. Yeah. Okay, so I've divided up positions into like different levels. So lower position, if you're more of a beginner at reading, is the first to the second position. So I've found that there are lots of pieces that are sort of like beginner type pieces that are in the first and the second position. So you don't have too far to move. We'll call that the lower position range. Middle position, intermediate, will be third to the ninth. All right, it's quite a big jump there. Third position all the way up to the ninth. So we find intermediate pieces often venturing from the third to the ninth. And then the upper position range, the advanced, ninth to the 12th. Okay, so these are, much, much higher, typically more advanced pieces, easy beginner, intermediate pieces tend to not go so high in range. And then we'll look at references. So there are two types of references that are really important to keep in mind. Pivot notes, notes that are held down from one beat to the next, and close notes, notes that are in close range to each other. And we'll look at that. We'll look at all of this right now. So here is an example of a piece in a lower position range. It only goes in the first and the second positions. Okay, so this is a piece that's only in the first and second positions, and I've marked in the positions, and a lot of the fingerings are already marked in there. But if you know what position you're in, it really helps, because what it does essentially is it narrows down the fretboard. So the fretboard is not this huge thing anymore. It gets narrowed. First position's only 4 frets and 6 strings. Okay, that's all it is now. And it's one finger per fret. So you pretty much, you're going to stick yourself into that position and not move, okay? Because if you move, then you go out of position and you lose your reference entirely from that point. So would someone like to have a read through this, and preferably someone who feels that they're a bit more of a beginner at sight reading? I don't want someone who's too advanced at sight reading to read this, because so someone who feels a bit more like, and don't be afraid or ashamed or anything, or shy, please, we're all friends here, love to help you out, and we can all learn from each other. And there might be some extra tips that others have, or
I don't mind having a go, Dan.
You want to go? That is name, please.
Helen.
Helen?
Yeah.
Helen. I don't know. Helen. We don't think we've met before on.
No, we haven't. No.
Yeah.
I got up very early. I'm here in the UK.
Okay, I'm trying to scout you. Where are you? Hi, there you are, Helen. All right, excellent.
Hi.
Excellent, Helen. Thank you so much for volunteering. So maybe I'll get you to read just a little bit that here in the first position, and then just for time's sake, we'll move on to like the second position material. So would you like to? start with these, maybe the first couple of bars here, please.
Yeah, so I know that's a C, so that'd be an A, and then A, B, C, D, E, D, D, E, F, D.
Oh, sorry, we're going to actually play this if you don't mind.
I got to play it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
blimey.
sorry for not clarifying. Please, yeah, please play.
Is that right? And then G
That's a typo. That should be a yeah. Play a G if you like, but yeah, it should be an E.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
So that's an E, and then that's an
Nice job, Helen. I might stop you there. I think you're doing quite well, very well at that. Good job. I might make it a little bit more challenging and get you to start playing now from here, please. So we're starting in the first position here.
Yeah.
And it's going to start moving now. It's going to start moving positions. We have 3 sharps in the key signature. I'll just give you some context too.
Yeah, okay. 3 sharps.
F, C, and G sharps in the key signature to keep in mind.
The A major?
Yes. Yeah, very good. A major.
Okay. So that's I've got that.
Let's just check that note, please, there, Helen. So we've got a 4 there, and we have
a D.
A D. Good. Yeah. Could you show that bar again, please?
That's a B. Oh, G sharp.
Yeah.
B and D.
Good. Nice.
And then C sharp. And then shifting up to
the second position, and this is where you're going to stay in the second position until it's indicated here.
no,
Yep, second finger.
position.
So
Second finger on the
second finger in the second position. Hang on a second. Yeah, I think you're either using your third finger for the D. Could you start with the C sharp again, please, Helen?
Okay. C sharp on the second, so first finger C sharp.
Yes, please.
Oh no, it's a
yeah. And now we're going to the first position. Good. I'll stop you there, Helen. Great job. Fantastic work. So I've
performance.
Yeah, no, you're very good playing in front of a lot of guitarists. Very, very brave of you. Thank you so much. So I have a question for you. Did knowing those positions, did that help you in any way to read?
It did actually, yes, because it made it easy to feel where your fingers were going.
Yep. Excellent. So as I said, this for some of you this might sound fairly obvious, right? That we should know what position we're in. But as I said, in my experience teaching, I've seen many cases where people do not know what position they're in, even if it's something that they're playing quite fluently. And just by knowing what position you're in, it helps you not only to read, but to noise going on here. I just wanted to get that out.
Dan?
Yeah.
Dan, it's Kevin.
Kevin,
Just a quick question for sight reading. Looking at that piece that Helen just did, when she was playing in the first position, the fingering marked on the score shows that D has been played with finger 4.
Yeah.
Whereas, typically I would have used finger 3. For the D, one finger per fret. Would you tend to stick to fingering that you're familiar with, or would you use the fingering that's shown when you're sight reading specifically?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's a purpose to why he's using the 4th finger, probably because it's aimed at a less experienced guitar player who might find the stretch in the first position of having your first finger at the 1st fret and putting your 3rd finger at the 3rd fret can be uncomfortable for a beginner guitarist. So I think Saw is recommending to use the 4th finger in this case. And yeah, it does kind of take you out of strict first position in terms of one finger per fret. So that's a good question. We do have exceptions, and Kevin, that's a really good. So we have exceptions, and we have things to keep in mind, some subtleties when it comes to position reading in positions, and that's one of them. So Kevin brought up a really great point there, that 4th finger on the D. Another couple of things here. Sometimes we'll find what we could call a squeeze. So if you squeeze a finger into one position, that would otherwise change into another position. So if we go to bar 19 here, so here we're in the 2nd position, and we're using the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret. So we've got the 1st finger on the 2nd fret and the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret. So I'm calling that a squeeze because if we're in 2nd position, we would be one finger per fret like that, but we're squeezing the 2nd finger just for a moment onto the 2nd fret as well. Okay, so we do get some, it's not always going to be one finger per fret strictly. So there's an example of a squeeze. And then a midway is when position shifts occur in between beats. So kind of like at an awkward time, when you have to shift at an awkward time, like in the middle of a bar, middle of a beat sort of thing, middle of a main beat. So you see that most of these shifts actually occur on strong beats, right at the start of a bar, for example, or on another strong beat like that one there. That's on the strong beat, on the 2nd main beat in 6/8. But there are some examples, for example, bar 36, where we change beat here, and it's kind of awkward. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's a strong beat there. There's a strong beat there. We're going to change on an off beat, on a weak beat, and that can sometimes feel a little bit awkward as well, but it's really good to know. So if I play that for you, I'll play that bar for you, have a look. So I'm starting in the 1st position, I'm going to shift into the 2nd position there. So okay, so sometimes we get these shifts like mid-beat, and you could find other examples of that too. But most of the time, the shifts will occur on strong beats. Okay. So if we go to the middle position range here, this is now from the 3rd to the 9th position. This example actually gives us the positions, as you can see. Okay, it gives us the positions. It doesn't always tell us the fingering though. So that's our job to know what fingers we're using. But sometimes it does give us the fingering. So I might start someone off in the 5th position here. And if there someone who feels a little bit more, who feels comfortable with reading something like this a little bit higher up in the 5th position.
maybe I can try, Johannes.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have a very poor eyesight, and that is one of the reasons I like to improve.
Right.
So,
can you
I
see
just,
this okay?
I can see it, so I will try it.
Thank you so much, Johannes.
I will do it slowly. Oh, it's fifth position. A moment.
I can see you really leaning in there. I can zoom in even more if
Sorry.
that helps.
Yeah.
It's okay. No, don't apologize if you're having trouble with your eyesight.
But I see there.
That's it. Good. Good job. Just want to move your third finger over to what string here to play this. What note is this one here, Johannes?
It goes from the A.
That's it. That's
A to the
yep.
C sharp. Is it three? Is it in A major?
Yeah, it's in A major. Yeah, very good. That's it. Great job, Johannes. Why don't you take? Can we take you to the second position, to the next little fragment here? Maybe just this bar would be great. Stay in that second position. That's it. Good, yeah. So we do have a little squeeze there. The third finger squeezes up. Excellent job, Johannes. Fantastic. Excellent job. So this piece here tells you what position to go in, and it's constantly shifting, just as many guitar pieces do. Okay, especially when you get into the higher levels of pieces, they will shift. And what I'm trying to say here, it's, obviously you do need to get to the point where you go beyond, you don't want to be always writing the position and the fingering in. Okay, that's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is this is how you want to be thinking. You want to be thinking, what position am I in and what fingers am I using? What fingerings am I using? And eventually it gets to the point where if you think enough in this way, you start to be able to do it in real time more easily. So you're able to determine, well, what position am I going to, what position am I in, what fingerings do I use when I'm in this position. You start to be able to do it more in real time after practicing that. So very good. And then we have the upper position range. So now, 11th, 12th, 9th, 10th. This is La Cathédrale. Okay, so that would be an example. What we might do is actually move on to the next topic, though. Okay, so we'll move on just because of time. I would like to feature Kevin. It's great that you played the last example, Kevin, because I wanted to, showcase some work that Kevin did here. This is actually by Kevin here. So he's put in the positions and the fingerings for Lagrima. And I'd love to ask you, Kevin, did you find that process helpful for reading or learning the piece?
Yeah, absolutely. It helped getting to grips with the piece and memorizing it. And I found particularly when you get to sort of bar 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are all sort of up in sort of the dusty areas of the neck. Yes. It really helped to be able to work out which position I was in. It kind of helps stabilize the fingers. So yeah, it was a great help.
All right, thank you, fantastic. Thanks so much, Kevin. That's great. Great to hear that process, how that process helped you. So it's just a little paragraph here that I'm saying is this becomes much easier to read if you know what position you're in at all times and what fingers to use. So this is the task here, to write into your score every position and fingering that you play. And you can use visualization to reinforce this, which means either visualizing the fretboard in your mind before you do this, or while you're doing this, or taking this score that's already been done and visualizing in your mind, visualizing the fretboard. And it's a very you know, it's a very sort of how do we say this? It's a task that can't be easily, you know, checked on, if you know what I mean. It's like it's all in your mind. So Martin, did you raise your hand?
Yes. Hello, Daniel. I just have a quick question. I understood when you were talking about positions, I understood the low being from fret 1 to fret 3, the mid being from fret 3 to fret 9, and the high being from fret 9 to fret 12. I just became a little bit confused then when you started using terminology instead of saying the 5th position, the 6th position. I was like, oh God, does that mean? I got confused about like the 5th position is the 5th fret, or I didn't understand that because I understood the low, mid, and high. I got that, and then I just got a bit confused.
Sure. Just need some clarification. So position is determined by what fret your first finger is playing at. So if your first finger is playing at the 5th fret, then you're in 5th position.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So that's.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries, Martin. And then I was breaking it down into different ranges. So we had beginner range, 1st to 2nd position. That means you're only going to travel between the 1st and the 2nd, and then middle position, 3rd to 9th, and upper 9th to 12th.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. So there are your tasks for that, and you might, Kevin, the way that Kevin spoke about this, it sounded like he had to kind of, especially in certain areas of the piece, he kind of really had to work it out. What position am I in when I play these notes? How do I, excuse me, how do I put my fingers down so that I'm in a particular position, and what position is that? And I know for some of you it will sound very, rudimentary, but it's extremely crucial. It's really, really crucial that everyone is able to do this, and that you're able to know what position you're in at all times.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Dan.
Kevin,
Please. I have to say I didn't do the fingering and working out the positions when I first started working on the piece. It was a while before I actually added that in. And until that point, it kind of felt like when I was in the upper positions, which are much less familiar, I was kind of throwing my fingers at the neck and hoping for the best. And that's the way it worked. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And it wasn't until I sat down and worked out exactly where everything was and what the positions were, I kind of had the reference points to work from that started making the fingering much more secure.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks again for that great insight there into what this process was like for you. That's really great to know. And I think if there's anyone here who hasn't done this before, I think you'll experience a very similar thing to what Kevin experienced and to what he's said. Okay, so that's really fantastic. Okay, so fretting notes, we've talked about positions and fingerings. The next part we're going to talk about is references. So this is a way to keep track of notes that you've already played. There are two main types of references you can use. Pivot notes, which are notes you can hold down, notes that stay the same. And close notes, notes that are in close range to each other, like 1 to 2 frets away, for example. So I've indicated here with green, these are pivot notes. These are notes you can hold down. And then in red, I've indicated close notes, right? And this is related to a little bit to what we were talking about with, you know, looking at the motion of a melody, for example, or the intervals as well, right? So because this melody is moving by a scale motion, a scale line, A, B, C, D, E, that means the notes will probably be close by to each other, right? We won't have to move very far, and we can use those as reference points. And then another thing to look out for are notes that you can hold down, or notes that are being held across for an extended period of time. So for example, this D, we can just hold that down. If I play this example for you, watch my fourth finger closely. Did you all see that? I didn't lift my fourth finger at all, right? Do it again. Okay, so I'm calling that a pivot note. All right, so pivot note and close notes. We can go a bit more long range as well. This can be really helpful. Like if you have a bass line, for example, you've got this D, and then you've got all these notes here, and then you've got a big leap. You know, if you're reading notes like this, you get to this point, you get to the B, and then you got to go, well, what's the next note that's a big leap, right? Well, if you've practiced your intervals, you know it's a fifth, it's E to B. That's one way you could do it. But then in terms of putting it onto the guitar, that's an extra challenge, isn't it? So what you can do is you can refer back to the closest note to that E that you were playing earlier. So the closest note to E that you were playing earlier was this D over here. So if you get to this point, you see this note, and then you actually look back over here. You say, there's D. Well, okay, I know that this note's probably going to be maybe on the same string, or, you know, close by, and happens to be on the same string. It's got the second finger there. So that gives me a bit of a reference point. I can say that's an E with my second finger on the same string. Okay, so it gives us a bit of a long range map, a long range reference as well. So Nicholas, with pivot notes, holding down notes aren't carrying the time value longer than indicated. Pivot. Yeah, we are holding down, sometimes we are holding down the notes longer than they're indicated. That's true. This is more of an exercise for pivoting. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay for the purposes of sight reading, definitely. Cool, Nicholas, thanks. So in this next example, we've got this similar indications here. So the green for pivot notes we can hold down, and the red for notes that are close by. Okay. So this is an example we were reading earlier on. So let me play this for you. So now I'm using a half bar, and that's kind of where the pivot notes come in, right? So I've got this E over here. So I'm putting my first finger on the 9th fret, right? And then I'm seeing that there's a C sharp next there, so I'm going to put a half bar down. That might be a little bit of extra information you could write, half bar, to indicate that. Half bar, the 9th position. So those two notes carry on into the second bar, right? So I've still got that note at the start of the second bar, and I've still got that note at the end of the second bar. So those are really great notes that I can just hold down. I can hold those notes down. Okay. See, when I've got this knowledge in mind, my fingers don't move so much as well. I'm staying in the 9th position. I know that those are pivot notes. I can hold those notes down. They also become references for me. I know that once I've got that note, I can just remember. I don't need to necessarily know that's an E again. It's just in my kind of short-term memory. And this note's kind of in my short-term memory as C sharp. And then when I play these notes, well, I know they're not going to be over too far away, right? They're not going to be over here on the bass strings. Probably going to be around the same strings that I've started on here. Okay, it's going lower, right? This C sharp's going lower. So if I'm staying in position, the only way to go lower is to change string, right? I'm not going to go out of position to play the B. I have to play the B somewhere else. So I'm going to play it on the second string. Once I find that B with my fourth finger, you could write in the 4, when you figure that out. Then it's a matter of saying, okay, where would the A be, right? A is very close to B, right? It's just like a scale. Okay, so where would the A be? B. So if we go 1 fret lower, that would be B flat or A sharp. So if I go here, that's the A. So with my second finger, so you could write in the 2. Okay, A to G sharp. Well, if I lift my second finger, that gives me the G sharp. So you could put a little 1 there, and then we're going back to the A, which we played not too long ago. Okay, so that combination of references of pivot notes and close notes can really help us. Again, it narrows the fretboard even more for us. Plus, it gives us as many references as possible, so that they're sort of like pillars that we can revolve around. All right. So, and then this example, funnily enough, this is probably one of
sorry, Dan. Can I interrupt there a second? It's Kevin again. I was looking slightly ahead. I followed you through those 2 bars. When you get to the next bar, bar 3, would you keep your half bar A on? I mean, it's not absolutely necessary, but I'm just wondering whether you would or not.
I probably would, because you sort of have. It's not necessary. It's sort of, it's a bit of personal preference. I personally would, because it just requires less movement for my fingers. For example, when I'm playing, when I play that E there, my first finger's already covering the E when I'm over here, right? When I'm over here, my first finger's already got that note down. I don't have to move around to get it. But holding a half bar down for such a long period of time could be tiring for some people. So it sort of depends on that factor a little bit.
Okay, that's helpful, thanks.
Yeah. And then I would just indicate that that's something you would indicate in the score, your decision. So then you would say, you would say lift bar here, or you could just say 9th without the Roman numeral. Just write a 9 there, and then that's kind of telling you, well, still in the 9th position but no bar. Or you could write that and lift bar, if you want that much detail. So that's good point there, Kevin. So this example here is the most advanced, the highest in terms of positions. But have a look at the pivot notes that we have, right? Once we find the first and the second chords, it's really the second chord, you can see that there are 3 notes pivoting into the 3rd bar, and then pivoting again into the 4th bar. Okay, we're holding down 3 notes from here to here to here. So that's a really good one to know, right? Because if you're reading this through and you play that and then you lift all your fingers, you don't look ahead to what notes am I holding down. If you lift all your fingers when you get to this point, you're going to lose your reference, and you've lost the potential of holding down 3 different notes, or at least knowing what notes are staying the same across the bar. We've got 1 open string there that's staying the same. So here we have the 4th finger and then the open B there. They are staying the same into the 2nd bar. Okay, so now bar 2. I'll play bar 2. Okay, so this little chunk of my hand here with 2 and 1, I'm holding down because they're pivot notes. The only note that's changing is this note, which is F sharp, is dropping down to E. Everything else stays the same. And then into the next bar, that top note changes up to G. This still stays the same. Okay? So an awareness of what notes are staying the same is incredibly useful. You know, if you're starting to look ahead and you can see that, oh, I can hold these notes down into the next bar, is extremely useful, especially, you know, for a piece that like that where you're in the very extremes of the guitar and high up on the fretboard. So okay. So the better you get at finding references, the less you have to worry about when reading. Develop your skills at identifying references and you'll be a much more efficient reader. So how do we develop our skills at this? Again, it's a matter of practice. So if you mark in pivot notes and close notes into your music, that's a great start. It's a great way to start practicing finding these things, right? It's like you have to dig a little bit. You have to actually find these things. It takes study and practice. So you're doing, I guess, you know, what may be something that I'm realizing is that your sight reading will become much more intentional. Your practice of reading will become much more intentional. You're not just going to get a sheet and read through it, right? There are certain things that you go to, certain processes that you're going to do. That's what this is all about, these processes that you can use. It makes your sight reading practice much more intentional. Okay, so mark in the pivot notes and the close notes. Lots of marking in, right? Lots of studying so far. What have we studied so far? You know, the movement of notes. Is it moving by a scale or by a chord motion? Intervals. What intervals are being used? Fingerings and positions. What position are you in? What fingerings are you using? And then references, close notes and pivot notes. Right? That's all. It's quite a bit of work there, but it's very intentional, and it starts to get you thinking in a different way. It starts to get you thinking about what's happening in the music, having a deeper connection to the music, and then having a deeper connection to the fretboard by knowing the position and the finger you're in, and then an even deeper a deeper connection by identifying reference notes as well. So we're going to just quickly talk about the last topic because time is running short, and I know I've thrown a lot at you already. If it feels overwhelming, you know, I'll summarize it at the end a little bit. It's kind of, you know, the number of things to do is not super overwhelming when we sort of just distill it into, you know, into a summary. So let's just quickly talk about rhythm, because I think rhythm is can be a very misunderstood topic. So grouping rhythms, reading rhythms, and playing rhythms. Grouping rhythms is really important because you'll find that in music there are certain rhythmic patterns that occur much more frequently than others. Okay, so here's a summary of, you know, our very basic note values that we have: whole notes, minims, crotchets, quavers, and semiquavers. Here are the most common note groupings that we find in music, and I've labeled each one. Okay, so S1 is just a minim, S2 is if we have semibreve is S1, minim is S2, crotchets S3, quavers are S4, and so on. So we have these different groups. So what you're doing here is you're starting to group with your eye, you're starting to group rhythms into larger units that occur a lot in music. So we only have 15 here. It's not a huge number, right? 15 rhythms. If you know these 15 rhythms, I'll be very confident that you'll be sorted for most rhythms that occur in music. If you know these 15 rhythms, if you can group these and you know these, if you can identify these rhythms and then play them, as we'll look at in a very short moment, then I'm very confident you will know, you won't get stuck very often. Yeah, there are occasionally rhythms that are more, outside of this, but from my experience, these are the main rhythms we find in simple time. So simple time means in these time signatures, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. Forgot the slash, yeah. And then in compound time, these are the rhythms we tend to find in compound time. So compound times, if we have an 8 at the bottom of the time signature, and here we only have 9 different rhythms. Okay, so it's not like a huge number of rhythms to get to know compared to what we might think, right? When you kind of summarize it. Like someone asked about dotted rhythms. You do find more complicated dotted rhythms than this, but most of the time these are the dotted rhythms that you find in music. Okay, so grouping rhythms. So what you want to do is you can start to group rhythms, and for example, if we look here, we have a single crotchet. I've got my simple time chart ready over here. So we see that there's a crotchet there, so that is S3, right? And then we see this unit of rhythm. Who can tell me which one, in the chart here, where do we find that one?
S16.
S16, very good, Eli. All the way, the very last one there, S16. Okay. And then we can see that, this is the thing about rhythm, once you can identify a few, you'll find that those few will often be used over and over again in a piece. So that S1 and that is S16. Okay, if we look at the rest of the rhythms for the next 2 bars, remainder of the 2 bars, S1, S1, S16, S1, S1, S16. Okay, so from here to there, we've only used those 2 rhythms so far. If we go on, there's S1, 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 S16, S1, S16. Does everyone see that? Is that sort of clear? Yeah. So the only one we're left with is this little chunk in the middle here. So that is over here, S4, just quavers. Okay, so that's S4 there. All right. So we've gone from, maybe some of you, would read this and it would just be overwhelmed at each new rhythm you get to. You're sort of thinking, here we go again. I've got to subdivide this, da, 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 da. And then I go here, there's a crotchet, and then there's a crotchet. And then I'm here again. I'm going to subdivide this, da, 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 da. Right? One, e, and da. Well, that's one way to do it, but I've had not much luck with that method, to be honest. I've had a lot more luck myself. I don't know if luck's the right word, but I've had a lot more success grouping rhythms like this. So I see that as a group, I see that as a group, and then I start to see these groups of rhythms now. Okay. The next point is to read rhythms, right? So now once we've grouped them, we want to be able to read them and play them. Okay, it's kind of like what we were doing with pitch. We wanted to read the pitch first and then play it. So once you're able to read those rhythms in groups, then you can start to think of, saying them or playing them. Okay, and we can use different syllables in order to learn these rhythms. So this one is just a very long beat, okay, which is fine. This one is called, we say to, and then this is ta, 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 ta. This is t, 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 t. This is triola, 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 triola. Ticka, 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 ticka. Okay, and so on. And so I've written down the way for you to speak each of these rhythms underneath each pattern. Okay. So if we come to reading a piece again, we'll go back up to these examples. We can use what we just looked at. I'll get that chart up again. Yeah. So here we've got a minim, which is said to, and then we have crotchet, which is said ta, ta, to, ta, ta. Right? That's how I think of rhythm. And then ta, 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 and then again with the to, ta, ta. All right. So that is the saying of rhythm. If we see the dotted rhythm S16, tum ti tum ti tum ti tum ti. So there were people who mentioned dotted rhythms. I wonder if someone would like to have a go at reading the rhythm of this line, saying these time words. So we've only got two different time words, ta and tum ti. Would someone like to have a go at that?
I'll have a go. Colleen.
I'm still there. I think who was that? Colleen?
Yep.
Colleen.
Go,
All right.
Sam.
Have a go, Colleen, please.
Okay. So ta, tum ti ta, ta, tum ti ta, ta, tum ti ta, ta.
And then we change there. That's great. Fantastic.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's TT. Those are TT there. So
Tum
if we go to
ti.
yeah, and then we'll do the rest of it.
Ta, 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 tum ti ta.
Awesome. Excellent. Does that sort of change anything for you, Colleen, in how you read rhythm?
I suppose, yeah, it's helpful having something like that because you get a rhythmic pulse from a word.
Yeah.
Saying words.
And you said that the way you said the rhythm was spot on. Like if you played it like that. Right, it was spot on. You didn't have to subdivide. You didn't have to do any like fancy tricks or anything. You just got the rhythm straight away, like perfectly first go. Yeah, and that's the advantage of learning these groups and practicing them. So that's your next task here. Probably, I would say one of the most important ones in terms of the rhythm part of this is to practice reading through a piece using the rhythm words. Okay, so I'm kind of going up and down here, but the first task is to identify the groups. Okay, so identify the groups of rhythms using the chart. Is it S4? Is it S6? You know, what rhythms am I seeing on the page? Then start to say the rhythms using those words at the bottom. Okay, and then the last step is to play the rhythms. And what I suggest you do with playing the rhythms is don't worry about the pitch, but just play the rhythm on an open string. Just play through the rhythm on an open string. So if we go back to that example that Colleen just read so well, if we play that rhythm on an open string, okay, and I've just got the rhythm. That's it. That rhythm is there. So you can kind of distill something like this into that. It's called a compound rhythm. A compound rhythm because, like, if we have a chord and one of those notes, let's say this note at the bottom was a minim, the compound rhythm would still be a crotchet because we got one tum, we get ta, ta, ta. Okay, so sometimes in guitar music we have multiple note values at the same time, but you just want to find the compound rhythm. So there is the task, and then so here is here is an example where we've got a melody and a bass line, and if you wanted to, you could actually practice both the rhythm of the melody and the rhythm of the bass line. together using open strings. And you'd find that this piece, the rhythm is in 3/8, and it might look, you know, the rhythm might look a bit more complex, but funnily enough, all of the rhythms fall under these categories here. All of these rhythms. So if we look at this one in the first bar here, we see that is over here, C7. You see the link there, C7. T ticka ticka, T ticka ticka, T ticka ticka. Right? That's that rhythm there, T ticka ticka. The next one is just 3 quavers, T T T, T ticka ticka, T T T. Okay, that's the rhythm of the next bar. Okay. We will find some rhythms that, you will find some rhythms that are not here, but the majority of rhythms will be based on these groupings that I've provided here. All right, so play and or write out the rhythm of a piece using open strings. And then finally at the end of the book, I've got an appendix for you with pieces that you could read through, and I've graded them as well. So we have beginner, and then so a range of beginner, and then intermediate pieces you could read through, and then advanced pieces. Yeah. So trying to cater to everyone there. All right.
Right, Daniel, it's Karen here.
Karen, yeah.
Can you explain compound and non-compound rhythm again? Because I quickly went back, and compound time is 3/8.
Yep.
But you're saying that last example is a non-compound rhythm.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Compound rhythm is when you like abstract the rhythm a little bit, so that you have to what's the word? You have to ignore, like if you have a chord, for example, and some notes have crotchets and some notes have minims in it, for example. Like we sometimes find many note values within one chord. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what we have to do is we have to say, well, what's the fundamental rhythm of that? Is it a crotchet? It probably will be a crotchet in that case. What is the fundamental rhythm of that? It probably takes a bit more explaining, which we will need a bit more time to explain that in more detail, I think. But the compound rhythm is like the essential rhythm of something, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not answering in a lot of detail there, am I?
That's right. Time's moving on.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But yes,
Thanks.
compound meter is meters that have an 8 in the denominator, the bottom number. Okay, compound rhythm, the beat is divided in 3, compound rhythm, and in simple rhythm, the beat is divided in 2. All right, so cool. There's another resource that John's mentioned in the comments there. The Fluent Guitarist for regular sight reading exercises at set levels. That could provide you with some more materials to use. I do strongly encourage you to use, unless you play, let's say, other styles like jazz or rock or blues or whatever. If you are, strictly a classical guitarist, I would advise you to stick to classical pieces. And it's one of the, one of the problems that I've seen is that a lot of the materials aimed at guitar players are not always aimed at classical guitar. So, John, is the Fluent Guitarist, is that aimed at classical guitarists, or is it aimed at any multiple?
Yes, yes, it is.
It is. Oh,
Am I on?
Okay.
I'm sure my microphone's going. Yes.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Excellent. All right, everyone. So let me just quickly give you a little summary of what to do. I know it probably feels like there's a lot there. I think someone said, well, watch this 2 to 3 times, and because there was a lot of information, and there is a lot of information, but there's a lot of action too, and it's the action that I'd love you to take the action here, because this is the important thing. The action, the tasks, that's really the crucial thing. So the tasks that you have, right, are to identify the movement of notes, to identify the intervals, to put in your positions and fingerings, and to put in your references, reference notes, pivot and close. So in terms of reading music, reading pitch specifically, not really worrying about rhythm. So in terms of reading your pitch, you want to look for scale motion or chord motion. You want to look at intervals, and you want to look at positions and fingerings and references. Okay, so it's just those 4 things. And then in terms of rhythm, it's even less. It's looking at the rhythm groups. How do we group rhythms together? And then how do we say the rhythms and play the rhythms? All right, so if we kind of distill it down, those are the action points, and that's what we want to start practicing, and we want to start getting into that mindset of thinking this way. And that's what happens when we do practice. And we can use some resources to help us, the Fluent Guitarist, if you want some materials, and Teoria, which was this link. I'll put this link up again for you if you want to practice identifying intervals and chords and that kind of thing. So there's a resource there. And I do want to let you know that, just to quickly finish up here, that this is a 4-week course. So 1 week and 2 hours. I've crammed a lot into 2 hours, but the plan is here to give you a week to kind of digest it, to watch the video through again a little bit, and I'll put the video in, then I'll put the timestamps in so you can get the different topics, as laid out, so you can just click on any topics that you are particularly interested in. So week 1, that's just what we've looked at there: reading notes fluently, fretting notes quickly, and understanding rhythm. Week 2 we'll look at, which would be next Tuesday, how music is structured. We'll practice some of the building blocks of music, and we'll start to group notes into chords by chunking. Week 3, we'll look at the fretboard, so exercises in positions, going up and down the fretboard. Practicing through the fretboard, so practicing the whole fretboard using a variety of charts. And then practicing movable building blocks that help us to learn the fretboard in even more detail. And then the last week, we'll look at musicianship, so singing melodies and intervals, playing rhythms, a bit more detail with that, and singing and playing for maximum skill level. Because if you can sing and play something at the same time, that's a really great sign that you've internalized the music. Okay, so if you haven't registered already, I've had some people register already, which is thank you so much for that. I'm offering a bonus for you if you register before the night ends here. So if you register in the next sort of few hours, so you get 3 free ebooks plus a 1-month subscription in January to Harmony That Matters, which is my online harmony school, and you'll also get a $50 discount. So the price will increase to $250. So it's $200 for the 4 weeks. So we'll have 2-hour lectures, 4 2-hour lectures, plus the materials, plus these extra materials. The videos will be recorded, so you can watch them back. I know, I'd probably watch it back too. There's a lot of information to digest. So I just wanted to let you all know. And here's the link if you'd like to register. I'll also send this to you again. Yeah, John, I definitely heard you. It's the fluent guitarist is classical. Yeah, I was affirming of that. That's really great. I might even add that as another resource to send to everyone. I'll email that resource, the fluent guitarist, so that can help give you some materials, and then really applying these processes. So you're not just putting music on your stand. You're actually you're being very intentional about your reading. How do you read these pieces of music so that you gain skills in reading further on down the track? Oh, thanks, John. There it is there, the fluent guitarist. These links will disappear after the meeting's up, so I'll send it through in another email. Okay, so I'll send through the fluent guitarist. I'll send through the theory one as well, where you can practice identifying intervals and chords and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'd love to see you. I know this, packed a lot into 2 hours, and that's just kind of the way it is in terms of delivering this in 1 month. Just have to pack in a lot each week, but you will have a week, a full week to kind of digest and think about and just try out some of the tasks as well. I think when you start doing the tasks, you'll really feel like I'm starting to get it now, and it's not as though you need to sort of do like an entire piece of music. Like, what intervals do we have for an entire piece of music, and then what is the motion of the melody for an entire piece of music? You can do as much or as little as you like. If you just do like 4 bars, that would be really great as well. So I'll clarify that for everyone. I know, just I don't want it to feel too daunting. I'll try to clarify that for everyone, how you can break these tasks down into smaller pieces. So I'll email you that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. We better finish up because we've gone a bit over time today.
When's the next one then? Is it just every Tuesday now for the next 3 weeks?
Yes, every Tuesday.
Sign up and then we get the link.
That's it. Yeah, every Tuesday. For the dates are in the link. But yeah, it's every Tuesday at the same time.
And if we can't make one of them, we can then catch up with the recording, which we'll send. Cool. Thank you. Been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. It's great to meet you and hear you play. And likewise, for everyone else, it's great to see some new faces and some old faces. And awesome. Thanks, Robert. Thank you. Oh gosh, waking up at 3 a.m. Thank you, Robert. I'm really chuffed that you're valuing it so highly. That's fantastic. Colleen, thank you. Thank you, Eli. Always great to have you, Eli, and Jill and Kevin, Stuart, Deb. Thanks, everyone. We'll wrap it up there. And
thank you. Thank everyone.
Thanks, Johannes. All right, it's great to have such a good bunch.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, Eli.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Well done, Daniel.
Aaron. Thank you, Les.
Well done. It's a huge amount of work you've put in.
Thanks, Les. Well, you've got a bit on your plate too if you want to take it on, yeah? So, yeah, you guys, I always get inspiration seeing other, the work that other people do. Hearing how this sort of helps others, like Kevin was really speaking very well of how this has helped him, and that just that makes my day. So Andy saying the rhythms, yeah, counting is hard. Counting sucks. If I had to find a word, subdividing just sucks. Like, I don't want to go one iana all the time. Maybe if there's like a really difficult rhythm, might be some times when we have to do that, but most of the time, yeah, we've got this nice collection of rhythms that occur in music. So thanks, Nicholas. Thanks, Pavo. I think Pavo's left, but thank you, Pavo. Thanks, John. Thanks for that Fluent Guitarist resource. Really good to know that one. Andy, Jim. Thanks, Jim. I'll wrap it up now. So thank you, everyone, and see you around. All the best.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, Les. All right. Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Bye.